The morning the story begins again, the wind cut sharper than it had in days. It wasn't merely cold, it was the kind of cold that carried messages, warnings, memories. The kind that made even silence feel louder. Across the wide, empty yard of the storage house, Deep stood alone, shoulders slightly hunched, breath misting faintly against the pale winter air. Behind her, the repetitive thuds of heavy sacks hitting the wooden truck bed created a steady rhythm, work that required strength, endurance, and the willingness to ignore pain. The tractor driver and the hired workers moved in practiced synchronization. Every sack weighed dozens of kilos. Every lift was a battle against gravity. Every trip across the bumpy yard demanded more strength than most men possessed. Yet they pushed on, determined to finish the loading before noon. Not for praise, not for reward, but because Deep had earned their respect. Deep approached them with the workers' pay carefully counted, holding it with both hands, a gesture both grateful and solemn. "Please let everyone have lunch and rest early," she told the tractor driver softly. "I'll be busy this afternoon, so I can't come to supervise. Please help me record the number of sacks. I'll check everything tonight." The driver nodded without hesitation. "Don't worry, Miss Deep. I'll handle it." Deep mustered a tired but sincere smile, bowed her head slightly in thanks, then stepped away. Every movement she made that morning carried weight, exhaustion disguised beneath quiet determination. Because someone was waiting for her, because she didn't have the luxury of collapsing. Because the world had grown colder since James disappeared. By noon, Deep's hands were icy despite her gloves. She held little Nee's hand as they walked along the row of winter clothing stalls at the market. Colorful scarves fluttered in the breeze like tiny banners of cheer against the gray day. Nee, small and bundled in her pink jacket, didn't seem bothered by the wind at all. Her little legs skipped, her eyes scanned every display enthusiastically. When she spotted a shelf stacked with children's sweaters, she darted forward, "Auntie Deep. This one, I like this one." She hugged a soft wool sweater in her favorite color, her face glowing with joy. Deep laughed softly, gently patting the girl's head. "All right. If you like it, we'll get it." They picked out a tiny scarf and a wool hat, adorably fluffy, guaranteed to keep Nee warm on morning walks. For a tiny moment, the world felt kinder again. On their way home, Nee tugged Deep toward the familiar figurine painting stall. She always insisted on visiting it, no matter how busy the day was. Today was no different. The moment she saw the figurines, she ran toward them, her small hand wrapped around a round, chubby little figure. Auntie Deep, I choose this one. It looks like Uncle James. Deep froze. Not because the figurine was inaccurate, it did, in fact, resemble James in a strange, comical way. But because of the innocence in Nee's tone, the sincerity, the attachment, and because the name James had become a quiet wound she tried desperately not to touch. Yes, Deep said at last, forcing a smile. It really does. Nee hugged the figurine tightly to her chest. When I miss Uncle James, I'll look at this. Then I won't be sad. Deep felt something inside her crack, softly, silently, like ice breaking beneath pressure. She knelt down, placed her hand gently on Nee's shoulder. All right, we'll keep it. But her eyes had already begun to sting, because James wasn't simply gone. He was missing, and missing was infinitely worse. That evening, the small house glowed faintly in the warm yellow lights, trying to push back the cold with the illusion of comfort. But even the lights felt tired. Deep stood in the kitchen, stirring a pan of fried rice. The steam rose around her, carrying the aroma of butter, egg, and crispy onions. She cooked automatically, her hands moving with the muscle memory of someone who no longer had mental space to think. Nee sat nearby, legs dangling from her chair, half asleep after the long day. When Deep placed the warm bowl in front of her, the child smiled drowsily and ate with obedient effort. Deep fed her spoonful by spoonful, wiping stray bits of rice from her cheek. Moments like this, small, fragile, fleeting, softened Deep's heart despite the storm that brewed inside her. After dinner, Deep prepared warm water for Nee's bath. The steam curled upward, fogging the small bathroom. She washed Nee's hair, scrubbed her back, then wrapped her in a towel like a tiny warm dumpling. Nee rubbed her eyes. Auntie Deep, I miss Uncle James. Deep froze, her breath caught. Her heart lurched. Her fingers trembled. She couldn't answer. If she opened her mouth, she might break. So she simply held the child close. After tucking Nee into bed, smoothing her hair lightly, Deep stepped out of the room and closed the door with a gentle click. Silence swallowed her. Not peaceful silence, but the kind that echoed, the kind that reminded her she was alone. She washed dishes, swept the floors, put away toys, moving from task to task non-stop because if she stopped even for a heartbeat, her mind would return to James. To the unanswered calls, the messages left unseen, the horrible, deafening silence. Every time she reached for her phone, every time she checked the screen, her chest tightened. Nothing, not a single sign of him. She didn't want to imagine the worst, but her brain refused to listen. At the lowest point of her exhaustion, Deep leaned heavily against the kitchen counter, closing her eyes. She imagined James stepping through the doorway. His messy hair, his tired smile. His soft voice, "I'm sorry. I was just caught up with something." The illusion was so vivid, she almost turned her head to look. But when she opened her eyes, there was no one, only cold air, only the void he left behind. "Tomorrow," she whispered shakily. "Tomorrow I have to go talk to Mr. Fat, I have to find James." The words were faint, but they were all she had left, her last remaining courage. In a forsaken corner of Cambodia, hidden deep within a labyrinth of dense, unmarked forest, James lay captive inside a deserted mansion that felt less like a residence and more like a mausoleum. Every corridor echoed. Every room was lifeless. Every wall swallowed sound. Guards patrolled constantly, their boots pounding a cold rhythm into the floor. Security cameras rotated with mechanical precision. Every path was watched, every door locked. To any normal person, escape was impossible. But James wasn't normal anymore, not after days of imprisonment. Not after what he had lost. Not after what he still needed to fight for Deep, for Nhi. For the life he refused to surrender. Days of observation sharpened his instincts. He memorized the guards' footsteps. Their patterns. Their laziness. Their habits. And then he noticed it, a 90-second gap during the shift change. It was small, almost invisible, but real, and to a desperate man, real was enough. James felt his heart slam against his ribcage as the camera rotated slightly slower than usual, leaving a sliver of blind darkness between two patches of shadow. A tiny flaw, one chance, maybe his last. He crouched low, every muscle coiled and trembling. The second the camera turned, he launched forward, not running, exploding. His feet barely touched the ground. His lungs burned, his mind sharpened into a single point: escape. He pressed himself against the vine-covered wall and slid along it silently. When he reached the final wall, 2 meters high, he didn't hesitate, he jumped. His fingers grabbed the edge. He pulled himself over, he hit the ground outside with a brutal thud. Pain flared up his leg, but he ignored it. He pushed himself up and ran, through the forest, through thorns that sliced his arms. Through darkness so thick it felt alive, but he didn't stop, couldn't, wouldn't, because freedom meant deep. Freedom meant Nhi. Freedom meant life. But, behind him, a voice roared. Flashlights burst across the forest. Dogs barked viciously. Branches snapped. Chaos erupted. James ran harder. His breath tore from his chest. His vision blurred. The lingering drugs in his bloodstream made everything tilt. Then Crack. The ground vanished beneath him. He fell. Violently, helplessly, his head slammed against stone. A burst of pain, then white, then nothing. The darkness swallowed him whole, and the last image in his fading mind was Deep holding little Nie at their front door.